Good evening. You are watching The Digital Age, and I'm James Goodale. You know, in the last election, the youth vote, that is to say 18 to 29, was enormously by large margins for Obama. That is the digital generation. Is there any way the Republicans can get that back, or have the Republicans lost a generation? Here tonight to discuss that question with us is Mike Connery, who is the author of this book, Youth Power. We're pleased to have you here, Michael, for many reasons, not the least of which is, for all practical purposes, missing by a few months, you are a member of the digital generation, and you're going to tell us what it's like. Now, I did a show with Morley Winograd before the election. He told me about you. He's used a lot of your numbers and so forth and so on. And we were trying to figure out what the margin would be of the youth vote. And what we did was we played a game. I said, Morley, you go figure it out. Morley had written a book based on yours in some part. And I'd done numbers. And we compared, we came to the thing, we showed our cards up. And here's how our exchange went during that program. If Kerry had a 1.7 million plurality, what do you think Obama's plurality would be?
Well, even if only 47% of this group votes, which I don't think is going to be true, it's going to be higher than that, it would still be about 8 million because of the unity of this group.
8 million plurality?
Plurality for this particular group of people.
Now, 8 million, now hear that. Now, listen, I've been...
Move it to 60%.
Move it up to 55%, it goes up to 9 million. Move it up to 60%, it goes up over 10 million.
So it's somewhere between 8 and 10 million vote plurality from the millennials.
I mean, this is amazing. Now, I have to tell you that I've spent 3 days trying to figure out the answer to that question. I said, you said you spent, before we went on, you said you spent 45 minutes.
Yeah, but I spent 45 years of my life doing this.
And you can add.
Well, I don't know.
And multiply and divide.
I can use a calculator.
Add, multiply,
nicely.
and divide. I can't seem to
It's
do
a
it.
digital age. You can do it on the computer.
But you know, I had an assistant with me, and I gave him this project, and he's very bright. And he kept bringing back 8, 9, or 10 million. I said, that can't be right. I don't know I haven't read that anywhere before. And by the way, have you?
I knew it would be bigger, but
have you read anywhere?
No.
All right. Now this is like one of these quiz shows, you know. Here before the election, Morley and I came up with $8 million. 8 million votes. We fainted dead away, and the answer is, Michael.
It's somewhere right now around 7.4 million votes. And the thing about that is this is all still based on estimates. We don't really know at this point exactly how many. When the census data comes out in the spring, those numbers almost always rise. So we actually could get to the 8 million mark that they predicted.
Well, weren't you surprised by this?
I was surprised.
You were surprised. We did all the math based on your theory.
Well, sure, but
we did it better than you. We did it better than you.
Sure. Well, I mean, beforehand, I guess I'm always a little bit of a pessimist. I always think they're going to come out and it's going to be great, but I've been banging my head against the wall, telling people young voters are going to show up for 2 years now, and I just wanted to be realistic in my own expectations.
What was your expectation?
I thought that turnout would be, somewhere in the low 50s, which is about where it was. In terms of the margin, how many
votes did you think it was going to be?
How many votes I think it was going to be? I wasn't really guessing at that. So maybe that's why the number took me by surprise. I hadn't crunched that particular
I couldn't get Morley to guess at the numbers. I haven't got any of my friends to guess at the numbers. I mean, this is why I think this whole business is so fascinating, among other reasons, because no one seems to have focused on it except you and me. Okay, so you were talking about what the voter turnout was and what your reasonable expectation was based on past history. I thought it'd be fun to put up some charts that I actually got by going on the internet and found that this guy Connery was putting out these charts. So let's go to the first chart. It says youth vote 18 to 29. Now, if we look over way to the right-hand side, it says 2008. And that blue line is a line that represents Democrats, okay? And so now if you take it down to the red line, the difference between the red line and the blue line is the margin of victory, okay? Now, if we go back to the earlier years, you'll see that the Democrats did not do well at all in this area in 1984. They really haven't done that well except in 2008, although there seems to be a trend going up. Okay, let's go to chart number 2. Chart number 2 is what the electoral map would look like if the election were decided by 18 to 29-year-olds. Youth takes over the world. Back in Kerry's election, 2004, not very significant, right?
Well, it was. I mean, it was still significant. Kerry lost, and if young people had voted only, he would have won by a landslide.
Oh, you're right. It's 375. I was looking at the red, but the red's all in the least populous states.
Exactly.
Oh, you're right. Well, I'm glad you're here. Okay, so let's go to chart number 3, which is suppose the 2008 electoral map would were decided by 18 to 29-year-olds. What do you think of this? This is extraordinary, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's really young people abandoning the Democratic Party in traditionally red states, Republican Party
in the red states.
all over the country.
Okay, and let's go to the last chart, which is which breaks down the percentages of the vote of young people in each of the last 4 elections. 66% of young people voted Dem, 60, 54, 48. Okay, so now we've got the charts in our audience brain, and we look at the last one. If you remember what's on the last one, one showed 66%, 2 to 1. I mean, that is the extraordinary number here, I think. What do you think?
It is. Since they started tracking age and views by age in exit polls back in 1976, there has never been a margin this large among an age demographic. So it really is an historic margin.
And why do you, to what do you attribute this?
I think it's a variety of factors. On the one hand, you had a candidate who actually spoke to young people for the first time. And those of us in youth organizing used to joke that John Kerry would go to college and talk about Social Security and Medicare, which most college students don't care about. But for the entire campaign, Senator Obama spoke to young people's issues. He invested real resources in going out and contacting young people. There's a great statistic that I saw from a Pew poll the other day showing that in the biggest battleground states, 25% maybe of people were contacted by McCain, young people, and it's up around 50% for Obama. So Obama was contacting young people at a rate of 2 to 1 or more in the key states. So it's really that investment by the Obama campaign, and it's the millennials themselves. They've grown up in a time of Republican rule, and they've seen that rule fail. The defining moments in their life so far are 9/11, the Iraq War, which was prosecuted horribly, Hurricane Katrina. They've seen what happens when Republicans control the government.
But let's go through that. And remember, we had the charts up there before. After 9/11, the young people didn't necessarily jump on the anti-war wagon.
They didn't.
Wagon. Yeah, go ahead.
Young people believe in sacrifice. John McCain's slogan was "Country first," but young people really believe that. And if they trusted the president, they thought that if he said this war needed to be done to protect us, then they were going to support him. And they were very much in favor of the war in the beginning, particularly the war in Afghanistan. But if you look now, they've seen how the administration has prosecuted the war. They've seen the effects that it's had on our credibility in the world. Young people are multilateralists. They don't like that we went at this alone. And now they're one of the most anti-war groups in the electorate.
So the war played a rather significant role in all of this.
It did. It definitely energized a lot of people against the Republicans.
Now let's think about this 7.3 growing margin might reach 8 million. Now, Obama won by 8.5 million. Let's say he won a little bit more than what the millennials contributed to. So you can make an argument that without the millennials plus a little bit more, we wouldn't be looking at Obama. Does anyone appreciate this youth power? I get so excited when I talk about it, but no one seems to pay any attention to it.
It's getting more attention this year than in 2004. In 2004, young people were the only age group that voted for John Kerry. Every other age group picked President Bush
is
again.
that right?
Yes, by a 9-point margin, they voted for John
Yes,
Kerry.
can I just interrupt you for a moment?
Sure.
Because I think everyone talks about point margins, as you just have. If we convert that point margin, as actually the clip pointed out in the beginning, that was only 1.7 million, because this group was growing larger.
That's right. But young people did vote for John Kerry, and I'm sorry, you'll have to repeat the initial question.
Yeah, they voted for him 60%, but they increased that even more this time. So what must be happening is, and this is what I want to ask you, everyone's coming through the pipe here. They all seem to be Democrats. If you were to take the 2/3 percentage of which you were just talking and projected it, what do you think is going to happen? In other words, what I'm asking you is, as you grow older, are you still going to be the color of your shirt, your sweater?
Research tells us that yes, most people develop their partisan loyalty early in life, and if you vote for the same party in your first 3 or 4 major elections before you turn 30, most people don't ever cross party lines again. So if you look at one of the original charts, you saw that Reagan won the youth vote, and in '88, George Bush Sr. won the youth vote. Those Gen X kids remain some of the most conservative voters in the electorate, even through now. So the people that have voted in 2004, 2006, 2008, the young people, they voted in increasingly progressive margins, and I think they are going to stick with that. Now, people that are coming in after, because less than half the millennials are even in the electorate at this point, they're still a little bit up for grabs.
Do you think so?
I think that Democrats have a huge advantage, but if an Obama administration or a Democratic Congress fails to deliver on the promises that they've made, if a Democratic administration turns out to be as incompetent as a Republican administration did, I don't know that the younger millennials will flip to the Republicans necessarily. I think that would require a pretty drastic change in policy platform by the Republican Party.
Right.
But we could see them not participate in the same numbers.
But if they did participate, do you think it'd still be at this margin, 2 to 1? Of course, if they don't participate, 60% of the lesser participation is a lesser margin. But to me, what the interesting question I'm trying to get at with you is this 2 to 1 margin. I think you said probably there's a chance that 2 to 1 margin wouldn't remain constant for the millennials who are in there. Is that what you think will happen?
I think that it depends on a lot of things. If the Obama administration turns out to not deliver on its promises, it could change. If the Democratic Party and future candidates don't reach out to young people in the same way that Obama did and actually have a real conversation with them, then again, it could drop. If both of those things don't turn out to be true, if the outreach continues, if the Obama administration delivers on energy policy and health care, and people feel that it's an effective administration, then yes, I think the Democrats can lock in this generation for the rest of their lives.
And so if you project forward, what does that mean?
I was reading
It means that Democrats never lose, doesn't it?
It means that, it's going to be tough. You are looking at a Democratic majority for a while.
Because we're looking at tons of people. What is the, is it 100 million people in the millennials?
It depends on different people define it different ways, but it's high 80s to 100 million,
100 million.
I was reading
100 million people coming through 2 to 1 for Democrats. They go on every year, they're older, and that 2 to 1 keeps going on and on.
Right, and what happens is...
I don't think it's probably going to happen, but we have a country we've never seen before.
I think that's right. And what happens is, as millennials get older, they will continue to vote at higher rates. Because, get over 30, 40, 50, and everyone's turnout increases no matter what. So this 2 to 1, 66 to 32 margin, it's going to be more impressive as more millennials vote. I was reading a study by Rui Teixeira, the pollster, and he said that in 20, 30 years, millennials are going to be, because remember, millennials stay millennials. They don't stop being millennials when they hit the age of 30. In 20 or 30 years, they're going to be maybe 40% of the electorate. And if they in 20 or 30 years,
40% of the electorate.
they could be up to 40%
2
of the
to 1
electorate.
Democrats.
Right.
Republicans can never win. Oh, let's just talk about the fact you say that they're going to turn out in larger numbers. One number that struck me, and now I'm going the other way in terms of my euphoria for all of this youth generation, is that this year the millennials came out at a 52.5% margin, and back in 1972 they were 55%, and a lot of people thought that that high point back in 74 would be reached again. And indeed, some people thought that they would vote at a 55%, 56% rate, and if they were really wild-eyed optimists, at a 60% ratio. At 52.5%, that's a pretty damn good turnout, because it wasn't so long ago, I don't know, 8 years ago or 12 years ago, they came out at 49%, isn't that correct? Something like that? Or is it 39?
It was 39.
39,
In
holy
1996, that's the lowest the youth vote ever was, and it was 39.
So the positive side of the story, going 39 to 52.5, that's a big jump. But to turn it around the other way, at 52.5, it's still less than the way the rest of us voted, which was what, 60%, something like that?
Something like that, yes.
Yeah. So what happened here?
Young people still face a lot of barriers to participation that older voters don't. Young people are very transitory. They need to re-register every time they move. So if they move from one dorm to another in college, if they switch jobs and they move from one apartment to another, they need to re-register. Problems happen in the re-registration process. They don't get put on the rolls. All of these little things add up. In addition, some municipalities actively discourage young people from voting. So in Texas, the polling place in a university town was 7 miles from the campus. That creates a barrier. Fewer young people show up. In Virginia, students were told that they were going to lose their scholarships and get kicked off their parents' health care plan if they voted in Virginia and they weren't originally from Virginia, which is false. The Supreme Court has said that students have the right to vote where they live, whether that's in a dormitory or elsewhere. So there's a lot of barriers to participation. If you look at states that have election day registration, you just show up. If you're not registered, if there's a problem with your registration, you re-register on the spot, cast your ballot. Turnout in those states among young people is 10 to 14 points higher than in states that don't have election day registration.
Oh, really? 10
Yes. So
10 to 14%.
So if you take into account that the place that young people are at in their life, they're more transitory, they've had fewer chances to register, and a lot of places actively discourage their voting where they live, it makes more sense that young people vote at lower rates.
What do you think the cap is? In other words, what do you think is reasonable to expect the percentage rate to be at its very best level? I mean, I would have to say, Jesus, excuse my language, but after all the work that Obama did, maybe 52.5. Do you think that's probably it, or do you think they can do more?
In terms of campaigns, just working to get young people out.
Well, next time we look at this chart.
I think they probably hit a cap.
Yeah, okay.
It's maybe it'll rise a point or two. I don't really see it going higher without structural changes to the voting process itself, like election day registration.
Let's talk about turnout in terms of the general election. One of the facts that I find really interesting, and I can't fully understand it, is that roughly speaking, the amount of people who turn out for this last election will be roughly at the level as the election of 4 years ago. Now, as you point out, we won't have the final numbers until the census returns come in, but it's been a nip and tuck actually to see if this year's turnout would be better than the one before. I think it may be, but not by much. But it's certainly less than the total votes that we thought we were going to have. For example, right now the number before the census comes out, it's about 125, 126. And in the euphoria of the Obama election day results and so forth and so on, everyone was thinking it was going to be 136 million. And then we got and everyone's excited about Obama getting elected. I'm excited about what the millennials have done. Then we go back and look. Hey, what happened to those 10 million people who are supposed to be out there? You got a view?
Yeah, I think
Oh, you do?
I think Republican turnout was depressed. In 2004, we had a highly contested election. It was, skin of the teeth. As you said yourself, the margins, weren't that big. This year, it looked like an Obama blowout for a long time. McCain ran a 100% negative campaign in the last 5 weeks of the campaign, and I think a lot of people get turned off by that. A lot of people thought that Obama's election was a foregone conclusion, and you saw a lot of Republican voters stay home, and that drives down turnout overall.
Why is it down? Because I would say if they stayed home, if they turned out, then the margin, we would have had a really tight, suppose those 10 million people we were missing all turned out and they're all Republicans, Obama would have lost. So you have to explain why if the Republicans come out, the Democrats come out. I'm trying to drive you in a corner here, but I think I'm trying to make a point, I think.
I don't know that Obama would have lost if Republicans came out. I think it would have been closer.
Oh, you really tight?
Yeah, and I don't know anyone that's crunched numbers on this, but I would also assume that, if people were busy that day and they figured, oh, Obama's going to win, this is Obama supporters, he's going to win, he doesn't need my vote. So, if the candidate is overperforming, you can see some people not turn out as well.
Okay, so one of the extensions of the logic of what we've been talking about with respect to the generational vote this time is this is a generationally important election where the world is going to turn. We have a new generation coming in, a new view of the world, and it's like Franklin Delano Roosevelt being elected in 1932. It has that much impact. That is one way to look at it, but when you look at the numbers, you have to say, hey, this wasn't such a big deal after all for Obama. And it's not such a big deal for generational change as a total change in society, but it's a big deal for millennials. But in terms of the great big generational change, so forth, it didn't come to pass. What do you think?
I'm not quite sure what you're getting at, but I'll take a stab at it.
What I'm getting at is this. This was thought to be an election that would completely change the nature of our country. Mm-hmm. But when you only win it by 5, 6, 7, or maybe 2 or 3 if you bring out those Republicans, it's not a double-digit time of mandate for total change.
I don't know that that's right.
Okay, argue.
Obama's margin of victory is one of the largest we've had in a generation. In terms of electoral votes, in terms of the percentage of the popular vote that he won. Right. I mean, people were arguing over George Bush getting a mandate in 2000 and 2004 when, he barely won. He won by far less than what Obama won by. So I think, in that sense, it is historic. It's historic in terms of, for me, what I've seen in my lifetime. I've been around since '78, okay. And this is one of the biggest margins we've seen since then.
Let's talk about you as the representative of the digital generation. What change in values do you think you will bring to our country, to the government, and how are those values driven in by the computer?
I think one of the biggest things is that we're going to see everyone move away from the idea that government is inherently bad, inherently inefficient. I think young people today believe in the government as a vehicle for positive change in everyone's life. So I definitely think in terms of political philosophy, that old concept is going to go away as millennials age in. In terms of
and why do they think the government's good?
Why do they think the government is good?
Yeah.
They think it has responsibilities and it has powers to do things. They've seen the market
it's part
fail.
Of the civic spirit of the digital generation.
It is part of the civic spirit. I mean, they've seen times when government should have acted in a different way to create more opportunity for people to move the country in one direction or the other, and they saw the Bush presidency fail to do that. And that means they're not very happy with the politicians in government right now, but they think that government is the appropriate vehicle for certain things. In terms of the computer, I think we're going to see a radical increase in transparency and participation in government. Young people have grown up with iTunes, you create your own playlist. Their computers all have software that lets them mash up songs. They have an unprecedented amount of control over their cultural lives since some of them, as long as they can remember, others like me in the last 10 years, most of the time when I've come of age. And they want to see that transferred over to government. Obama ran a very transparent, participatory campaign. You could interact with the campaign on Facebook, on YouTube, on MySpace, and I think they're going to want to see that carried over into the way that he governs. Right now, if you go to a website of almost any government agency, it's like you're back in 1996, 1997. So I'm hoping that Senator Obama updates government for the 21st century based on how he ran his campaign.
That's very interesting. He said that he would appoint a chief technological officer. Have you followed that?
I followed it a little bit, yeah.
And do you think that will help?
I think it will help. I think most people in government, they're there because they're an expert in a specific area, whether that's health, education, running some part of the government bureaucracy. They're not experts in technology for the most part. And I think having someone at a very high level that knows what's going on and can see how technology could improve what government does and make it more efficient is going to be very beneficial. And I think millennials are going to expect it. They're not going to sit there and wait and see what government does to them or for them. They're going to want to participate in that. They're going to want to be able to track it and follow it. And if they don't like what's going on, I think you're going to see them use these tools to protest it and change it, as they have on a lot of issues.
Most people who look at the digital generation, your generation, look at a generation thinks about bottom-up relationships, because everyone's on a computer. It's a horizontal relationship. It's not I'm the boss, you're the servant sort of thing. And what you've described is a bottom-up approach to government, because you want to participate with government through increased technology, so forth and so on. Do you think that, let's say with respect to the executive, the office of the president, that you can have, because your generation is participatory, any impact by being participatory?
I think we probably can. If you go back to 2006, there was a lot of anti-immigrant legislation in the House, and you saw young people use MySpace and use text messaging to self-organize and create massive nationwide protests that were far more effective than any protest the anti-war movement or any traditional organizing group has done in the last couple of years.
Okay, we've come to an end.
Oh.
Because of all these facilities, all these abilities, all the interest in the Democratic Party, has the GOP lost your generation forever? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike. Thank you very much for coming by. And come by next week and learn more about the digital age. I am for the digital age. James Goodale, have a good week.